Ismail Enver Pasha was born in 1881 in Istanbul, the heart of the waning Ottoman Empire. His early years were marked by ambition and a restless drive that set him apart from his peers. Educated in military academies, he quickly proved himself to be intelligent, bold, and unafraid of risk. He rose rapidly through the officer ranks, becoming a figure admired by some and distrusted by others. By his mid-20s, Enver was already shaping the future of an empire that was collapsing under internal corruption and external pressures. He came of age in a time of crisis. The Ottoman Empire, once a vast and mighty force, was shrinking under the weight of nationalist uprisings and European imperial expansion. Enver embraced the new ideas of reform and modern nationalism, which were spreading among young officers. He became one of the most visible leaders of the Young Turk movement, a secret organization of officers and intellectuals determined to save the empire by sweeping away the old order and replacing it with modern institutions. Enver was charismatic, handsome, and skilled at projecting confidence. To many, he seemed like the embodiment of a new Ottoman spirit. His reputation soared in 1908 when the Young Turks forced Sultan Abdul Hamid II to restore the constitution and parliament. Enver became celebrated as a national hero, one of the architects of a revolution that promised renewal. Songs were sung in his name, and crowds cheered him as if he were the savior of the empire. Yet behind the popularity was ambition. Enver was not satisfied with symbolic victories. He wanted power, and he wanted to reshape the empire according to his own vision. In the years that followed, he climbed higher. Appointed to key military positions, Enver expanded his influence within both the government and the army. His marriage to Princess Nasayi, from the Ottoman royal family, cemented his position among the ruling elite. By 1913, after a coup that gave the Committee of Union and Progress firm control over the government, Enver became one of the three most powerful men in the empire, alongside Talat Pasha and Ismail Pasha. He was named Minister of War, the youngest to ever hold the position. Now, he had both the title and authority to turn his dreams into reality. But with ambition came recklessness. Enver was determined to restore Ottoman greatness, but his plans were marked by overconfidence. He believed the empire could rise again through war and bold action. His first major gamble came during the Balkan Wars, where he commanded Ottoman troops. Though he fought with bravery, the wars ended in disaster, with the empire losing most of its European territories. Still, Enver emerged with his reputation intact, presenting himself as a man of action who would not surrender to defeat. When the First World War broke out in 1914, Enver saw it as an opportunity to reclaim Ottoman power. He led the empire into an alliance with Germany, believing that victory would allow the Ottomans to regain lost lands and secure a place among the modern powers. It was a decision that would define his life and the fate of millions. Enver threw himself into the war effort with unrelenting zeal, personally commanding armies on the battlefield. To his supporters, he was a bold leader who risked everything for his nation. To his critics, he was a reckless dreamer who gambled with lives. The most infamous of his military campaigns came in the winter of 1914 to 1915, when he launched an offensive against the Russians in the Caucasus Mountains. The operation ended in catastrophe. Tens of thousands of Ottoman soldiers froze to death or were slaughtered in one of the worst defeats in Ottoman military history. Enver escaped the battlefield unharmed, but his reputation suffered a blow. Yet he refused to admit failure, insisting that the empire's destiny still depended on decisive action. It was during this time that his name became tied to darker chapters. As part of the wartime leadership, Enver was implicated in the policies that led to the Armenian Genocide of 1915, where hundreds of thousands were massacred or deported under the guise of wartime security. Enver portrayed these actions as necessary for national survival, but history remembers them as crimes of staggering cruelty. His vision of saving the empire was increasingly stained with blood. By the war's end in 1918, the Ottoman Empire lay in ruins. The once mighty state was carved up by the Allies, and Enver, along with Talat and Cemal, fled into exile. For the man who once promised to restore Ottoman greatness, it was the ultimate humiliation. Enver Pasha's downfall was swift, but his name lingered in the history of empires. After the Ottoman defeat in the First World War, he fled into exile, moving through Berlin and Moscow, still searching for an opportunity to redeem himself. He was never one to accept defeat as final. In his mind, there was always another battlefield, another chance to carve glory out of chaos. In exile, Enver shifted his loyalties as it suited his ambitions. He courted the Bolsheviks, hoping to secure their support in building a new Islamic army that could restore his influence in the East. At first, he seemed to align with Moscow's plans, speaking of solidarity with the revolutionary cause. But behind his pledges of loyalty, he nursed his own vision, to rise as the unchallenged leader of the Turkic and Muslim peoples across Central Asia, independent of Russian control. His final gamble came in 1921, when he traveled to Turkestan, believing he could lead a great uprising against the Soviets. To many in the region, his arrival brought hope. He spoke of reviving Islam, defending their homeland, and uniting them under one banner. But the reality was different. Though charismatic, Enver was no longer the commander of a great empire. He led only small bands of fighters, poorly armed and without the discipline of a professional army. His rebellion soon collapsed under the weight of Soviet firepower. In August 1922, at the village of Abidirya in Tajikistan, his final battle came. Facing Red Army troops, Enver charged into combat with the same determination that had once made him a rising star in the Ottoman army. But this was no grand campaign, no clash of empires. It was a desperate skirmish. Enver fought on horseback, saber in hand, before being cut down in the chaos. His death at just 41 ended a career that had swung between brilliance and disaster, loyalty and betrayal, ambition and ruin. Enver Pasha's legacy remains deeply divided. To some Turkish nationalists, he was a romantic figure, a man who dreamed of resurrecting Islamic power and uniting the Turkic world. To others, he was reckless and egotistical, a man whose decisions hastened the collapse of the Ottoman Empire and caused unnecessary suffering for millions. The memory of his role in the Armenian massacres and the failed war campaigns left scars that overshadowed any vision of heroism. History remembers him as both a product and a victim of his time, born into an empire already in decline, desperate to restore its fading glory, yet blind to the limits of his own ability. He embodied the contradictions of the late Ottoman world, modern yet traditional, nationalist yet imperial, revolutionary yet authoritarian. Enver Pasha lived and died chasing glory, but he found only ruin, leaving behind a legacy as controversial as the empire he served.